SeaQuest DSV feels like a show trying to map the future from the bottom of the ocean. A massive submarine sliding through blue darkness, like a starship. Roy Scheider in command, talking to a dolphin like it is part of the crew. A teenage genius at a computer carrying more pressure than any 17-year-old should. Underwater colonies, corporate states, sea monsters, and science lessons curdling into sci-fi nightmares before the credits roll. But beneath all that deep-sea ambition, the show was quietly fighting its own mission from the very first episode. NBC launched it like the future of prime-time science fiction, only to watch the whole thing outgrow what any network could control. The captain at its center came aboard believing he was leading a landmark series before turning against it in ways that stunned everyone watching. And Jonathan Brandis became the face of a generation in a story that would feel much heavier years later. These are 11 weird facts about SeaQuest DSV, the underwater epic that started as a dream and slowly sank into its own identity crisis. Point 1. They wanted Star Trek underwater in the early 1990s. NBC was losing the science fiction war, and they knew it. Paramount was dominating with Star Trek, The Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine both running simultaneously, printing money and pulling enormous ratings. NBC wanted in. The pitch came from Rockne S. O'Bannon, the writer behind Alien Nation and later Farscape, and it solved the problem in a single elegant inversion. Instead of a starship exploring deep space, build a massive advanced submarine exploring the last frontier sitting right here on Earth, the uncharted depths of our own oceans. Same scale, same ensemble, same sense of crossing into the unknown, but underwater. The pitch landed at Amblin Entertainment, where it found the one executive who had been secretly waiting for exactly this project. Steven Spielberg fell in love immediately, and the reason was deeply personal. He had been obsessed with the ocean since childhood, first through Jules Verne, and then through the experience of making Jaws. He had been actively hunting a marine exploration project for years. He did not just attach his name. He shaped the show's entire philosophy, insisting it be grounded in optimism, hard science, and genuine education. Real marine biology, real ocean conservation, real scientific consultants on every episode. It could not be Star Trek with periscopes. It had to be something a kid could watch and walk away from wanting to study the sea. Point 2. The most expensive show on television, SeaQuest, was not built like a TV show. It was built like a film that never stopped airing. The 2-hour pilot cost $5 million. Individual episodes ran between $1.50 and $1.8 million each, nearly double the network average of the time. A full 22-episode season cost between $35 and $40 million to produce. NBC paid Universal and Amblin roughly $1 million per episode in licensing fees, close to double the industry standard, for a show that had not yet proven itself. The infrastructure matched the spending. SeaQuest became the largest TV production ever filmed at Universal Studios at the time. The submarine interior was so vast it spread across 5 separate sound stages. The bridge was built on Stage 28, framed by surviving scenery from the 1925 Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera set, a futuristic command center built inside the bones of silent-era horror. In 1993, high-quality CGI was still experimental and brutally expensive, and SeaQuest ditched physical miniatures entirely, rendering every submarine maneuver digitally on Commodore Amiga computers using Lightwave 3D software. The technology was a genuine gamble. Episodes ran chronically over schedule, frequently taking double the planned time to shoot. One crew member recalled they never finished an episode in anything close to the scheduled window. Executive producer David Burke later admitted the production regularly adopted a throw money at the problem attitude. The most expensive show on television was also one of the most chaotic to make. Point 3. Spielberg pulled his Jaws star out of movies in 1993. Film actors did not do weekly television. Crossing that line was considered a step down, a career signal nobody wanted to send. Spielberg crossed it anyway by casting Roy Scheider, the star of Jaws, as Captain Nathan Bridger. Scheider had 2 Oscar nominations, a reputation for selective, serious work, and had never headlined a television series. He was openly skeptical of the format. Getting him required selling the show not as an action series, but as an intellectual drama about environmental protection and scientific discovery, a vehicle for ideas rather than fight scenes. Scheider agreed, but he was hedging from the moment he signed. He said publicly that if the role were merely a submarine captain, they did not need him, and he did not want it. But if the character could become a cross between Jacques Cousteau and Popeye, it might be worth doing. He was not expressing enthusiasm. He was issuing a warning in advance about exactly what would happen if the show became something else. Spielberg got his leading man. NBC got the prestige headline it needed. Scheider got the version of the show he had been promised for a while. Point 4. SeaQuest's most famous character was never real. Darwin the dolphin was treated as a full crew member, a bridge between humanity and the ocean, and one of the only elements of the show that survived every reinvention. Millions of viewers believed they were watching a real trained dolphin. They were not. Real dolphins cannot survive in chlorinated studio tank water, and keeping a live marine mammal on a television set posed serious ethical and logistical problems. So the producers built one. Walt Coney and Edge Innovations, who had built mechanical marine creatures for the Abyss and Free Willy, constructed a series of sophisticated animatronic robots at a reported total cost of around $1.5 million. Different models handled different shot types. A heavy floating model handled bridge dialogue with subtle facial, eye, and blowhole movements. A sleeker motorized version handled swimming shots. Real dolphins filled in for inserts the animatronics could not cover. The audience saw one character assembled from at least 3 different physical versions cut seamlessly together. Darwin's voice came from Frank Welker, one of the most prolific voice actors in Hollywood history, whose credits include Megatron and Scooby-Doo. The vocoder translator device connecting Darwin to the crew was deliberately designed to sound imperfect and glitchy, giving him a recognizable broken quality that made the technology feel real. The most beloved character on the show was the one that never actually existed. Point 5. Spielberg shut the production down from Poland. Season 1 erupted into a creative war almost immediately. Roy Scheider wanted the grounded marine drama he had been promised. Original showrunner Tommy Thompson wanted a dark military action series. The clash grew severe enough that Spielberg, then in Poland filming Schindler's List, called the studio and shut the production down until the situation was resolved. The most acclaimed director of his generation, in the middle of one of the most important films of his career, pausing to stop a network television production over a creative dispute. Thompson was fired and replaced by David J. Burke, who realigned the show with Scheider and Spielberg's original vision. The premiere drew 16.8 million households and beat Murder, She Wrote in its first week. Then the weekly ratings came in, and the story changed. Critics called the science-heavy episodes ponderous. Audiences drifted away. By years end, the show had fallen to 83rd place out of 132 shows, regularly losing its time slot to Lois and Clark. NBC panicked and forced the writers to break their hard science rule late in the season, suddenly introducing a million-year-old alien starship buried on the ocean floor. The finale had Captain Bridger blow up the SeaQuest itself to seal an underwater lava fissure and save the world. The ship was gone, the cliffhanger was real, and Scheider's elegant marine drama had been blown up by its own captain. Point 6. Season 2 abandoned everything. Season 2 gutted the science, replaced the cast, and relocated the entire production to Florida. Dr. Bob Ballard, the real-world oceanographer who discovered the Titanic wreck and served as the show's scientific backbone, was removed. The crew spent the new season fighting psychic enemies, sea monsters, and alien artifacts. The network mandated younger, more conventionally attractive actors, explicitly demanding what executive producer Burke called the energy of youth and danger. The purge was deep. Multiple original cast members were fired, refused to return, or were let go. Only 4 actors remained alongside Scheider. The replacements included a character who randomly possessed telepathic powers. The season finale had a massive alien starship abduct the submarine, fly it through outer space to a distant planet, and leave the crew stranded in the middle of an alien civil war before the SeaQuest was destroyed for a second time, crashing into an alien ocean. The audience that had stayed through Season 1's struggles largely gave up. Point 7. The star went on a press tour to destroy his own show. Roy Scheider had signed on for an intellectual series backed by Spielberg and a real oceanographer. By season 2, he was acting alongside rubber monsters and man-eating glowworms. So, he did something almost no Hollywood lead had ever done. In September 1994, just as the season 2 premiere was about to air, he went on a press tour and publicly dismantled the show he was still contractually obligated to make. In a legendary interview with the Orlando Sentinel, he called the script Saturday afternoon junk for children, old tired time warp robot crap. He said he was ashamed of the series. He described the monsters and skimpy outfits as meaningless eye candy. Then he summarized the whole disaster in one line: 21, Jump Street meets Star Trek. Executive producer Patrick Hasberg fired back in the press, calling Scheider a sad and angry man who was lucky to be working at that scale. The feud played out publicly at the exact moment the network was trying to launch its new season. Scheider wanted to walk. NBC threatened legal action. He stayed, but only technically. For the rest of season 2, he quiet quit, doing the contractual minimum while visibly miserable on set. By season 3, the network agreed to release him on the condition he returned briefly to pass the captaincy to Michael Ironside before the show moved on without him. 8. Season 3 became a different show entirely. Season 3 was officially retitled SeaQuest 2032. Spielberg's name was quietly removed from the credits. The timeline jumped a decade forward. The tone shifted to claustrophobic underwater political thriller. The alien cliffhanger was resolved by having the crew return to Earth, but dropped 10 years into the future, discovering a world where the peaceful global federation had collapsed and the oceans were carved into warring corporate megastates. Michael Ironside played the new captain as a hard military tactician and drew his line immediately: no glowworms, no rubber monsters, and he would not be talking to Darwin. The budget was slashed. Cast members were dropped or killed off in the time jump. The stories became serialized political drama, closer to the hunt for Red October than anything in the previous 2 seasons. The show was constantly preempted by sports, making serialized storylines nearly impossible to follow. NBC canceled it mid-season. Only 13 episodes were produced. The series ended abruptly on June 9, 1996, without a proper finale. 9. It was mocked by critics and quietly won Emmys. Journalists at LA press junkets had already nicknamed the show before it aired, calling a dose bomb voyage to the bottom of the ratings. The series never escaped its critical reputation, but it quietly won Emmy Awards in the categories the press ignored. John Debney won the 1994 Emmy for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Main Title Theme Music. Don Davis won a 1995 Emmy for Music Composition. 2 consecutive years of recognition for a show the press refused to take seriously. 10. The teen idol it could not protect. Jonathan Brandis was already a recognizable face when he joined SeaQuest, known from the Neverending Story 2 and the 1990 IT miniseries. The role of Lucas Wolenzak turned him into something else entirely. By 1994, he was receiving roughly 4,000 fan letters every week. Universal Studios Florida had to assign 3 dedicated full-time security guards to protect the 17-year-old from fans who mobbed the theme park hoping to see him. Tiger Beat named him the #1 dreamboat. His on-screen bond with Scheider, a surrogate father and son dynamic that survived every rewrite around them, became the emotional anchor the entire series returned to. When the show was canceled in 1996, Brandis struggled through the same transition that derails many young stars. He pinned his hopes for a comeback on a role in the 2002 Bruce Willis film Heart's War. His scenes were almost entirely cut from the final film. The role he had been counting on was gone. Privately battling severe depression, Jonathan Brandis died by suicide on November 12, 2003. He was 27 years old. He remains deeply beloved by an entire generation of viewers, the teenager whose face was on every magazine cover, who carried thousands of letters home each week, who was the emotional center of a show that never quite figured out what it wanted to be. The teen idol the show needed. The actor it could not protect. SeaQuest DSV ran for 3 seasons, reinvented itself completely twice, burned through 2 full casts, fired its original showrunner while Spielberg was filming one of the greatest movies ever made, and ended in the middle of a sentence without a finale. It was too expensive, too chaotic, too ambitious, and too conflicted about what it actually was. And it still won't leave the people who watched it.